Have you ever heard the saying, "Don't bring a knife to a gunfight"? Well, during World War II, it sometimes felt like that, but with tanks. Imagine you're a US Marine facing down an enemy tank. The ground trembles, the engine roars, and this metal beast is coming right for you. It's a terrifying sight. But what if you discovered that your standard heavy machine gun could punch holes in it like it was made of Swiss cheese? That's exactly what happened when American forces first encountered the Japanese Type 95 Hogo tank. This story isn't just about a piece of military hardware. It's a fascinating look into the different philosophies that shaped the war. So, let's dive into the tale of the Hogo, the tank that US Marines reportedly laughed at as their 50 caliber bullets went straight through it. Understand the Hogo, we have to rewind to the 1930s. Japan, an island nation with limited resources, had a very different idea of what a tank should be compared to the European powers. While countries like Germany and the Soviet Union were dreaming up heavy, powerful behemoths for massive land battles across the plains of Europe, Japan was looking at its own backyard. Their potential battlefields were the jungles of Southeast Asia, scattered islands of the Pacific, and the challenging terrain of mainland China. For these environments, a massive 50-ton monster was not only unnecessary, it was a liability. Roads were poor, bridges were weak, and the ground was often soft and muddy. So, the Japanese Imperial Army issued a request for a light, fast, and agile tank. It needed to be able to keep up with motorized infantry, navigate difficult terrain, and be easily transportable by sea. The result of this thinking was the Type 95 Hogo. Designed by Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, the Hogo was a marvel of lightweight engineering for its time. Weighing in at just over 7 tons, it was incredibly nimble. Its diesel engine, while not massively powerful, gave it a good top speed of around 45 kilometers per hour, or about 28 miles per hour. This made it one of the faster tanks of the early war period. It was armed with a 37mm main gun and 2 machine guns. In the mid-1930s, this was a respectable armament, perfectly capable of dealing with Chinese armor of the era and providing infantry support. The Hogo was a success in its initial campaigns. In China, and during the early stages of the Pacific War, in places like Malaya and the Philippines, it performed exactly as designed. Its speed and agility allowed Japanese forces to execute stunning flanking maneuvers, often appearing where the enemy least expected them. The Allied forces, who were initially caught off guard, found the Hogo to be a formidable opponent. It seemed the Japanese design philosophy had been vindicated, so the Hogo was the right tool for the job. But then the job changed. The turning point came as the United States entered the war in full force. The industrial might of America began to churn out new equipment at an astonishing rate. And with it came a different kind of soldier, armed with different kinds of weapons. This is where our story about the Marines comes in. As American forces began their island-hopping campaign, pushing back across the Pacific, they started to encounter the Hogo in head-to-head combat. And this is where the Hogo's biggest weakness became glaringly obvious: its armor. Remember how Japan prioritized weight savings? To keep the Hogo light and nimble, its armor was incredibly thin. We're talking about a maximum of 12 millimeters of steel on the hull and turret. To put that into perspective, that's less than half an inch. Even the frontal armor, the thickest part, was barely more than a centimeter thick. This was designed to stop rifle-caliber bullets and shell splinters, which was fine for its original role. But it was completely unprepared for what the Americans were bringing to the fight. The standard American heavy machine gun was the Browning M2, affectionately known as the Medusa. This legendary weapon fired a massive 50 caliber round. It was designed to be an anti-material weapon, capable of taking out light vehicles and fortifications. When the Marines on islands like Guadalcanal or Tarawa turned their 50 cals on the advancing Hogo tanks, the results were shocking. Accounts from veterans describe how the heavy 50 caliber bullets didn't just dent the armor. They punched clean through it, one side and out the other. You can imagine the scene. A Hogo charges forward, looking menacing, only to be met by a stream of fire from an M2. Instead of deflecting the rounds, the tank's hull is perforated, turning the inside into a lethal storm of shrapnel and ricocheting bullets. It's from these encounters that the stories of Marines laughing emerged. It wasn't a laugh of cruelty, but more of disbelief and relief. This fearsome-looking machine, this symbol of enemy power, could be neutralized by a heavy machine gun, a weapon that every infantry battalion had in numbers. The psychological effect was immense. It turned a terrifying threat into a manageable problem. Of course, it wasn't just the .50 caliber. American tanks like the M4 Sherman, with its 75mm cannon, could obliterate a Hago from a safe distance. Even the lighter M3 Stuart tank, with its 37mm gun, was more than a match for the Hago in a straight-up fight, thanks to its superior armor. American bazooka teams also found the Hago to be an easy target. The Japanese tank, once a master of the battlefield, was now hopelessly outclassed. This highlights the critical difference in doctrine and industrial capacity. The US was able to continuously develop, produce, and deploy better armored and better armed vehicles. Japan, on the other hand, was stuck. With its resources stretched thin and its industrial base under constant attack, it simply couldn't produce a successor to the Hago in the numbers needed to make a difference. They continued to use the Hago right up to the end of the war, where it was little more than a mobile coffin for its crew. The tank's interior was also notoriously cramped. The three-man crew commander, gunner, hull gunner, mechanic, and driver were packed in tightly. The commander had to do two jobs, loading and firing the main gun, while also commanding the tank. This was inefficient and put a huge strain on the crew in the heat of battle. So, was the Hago a bad tank? The answer isn't a simple yes or no. It's a classic case of a tool designed for a specific purpose that found itself in the wrong fight. In the 1930s, against the forces it was designed to face, in the terrain it was designed to conquer, it was an excellent and effective weapon. It embodied the Japanese military's focus on speed, surprise, and aggression. But war evolves, and technology advances. The Hago was a snapshot of a particular moment in tank design. It failed to evolve, and by 1943, it was a relic facing a modern industrial war machine. Its story is a powerful lesson in military history. You couldn't just build for the war you want to fight. You have to be ready for the war you get. The laughter of those Marines wasn't just about thin armor. It was the sound of one military-industrial philosophy overwhelming another. Today you can see surviving Hago tanks in museums around the world. They stand as silent witnesses to a different era of warfare. They remind us that the story of any piece of military hardware is never just about the steel and the guns. It's about the people who designed it, the crews who fought in it, and the soldiers who faced it. The Hago, the little tank that could, and then couldn't, remains one of the most fascinating footnotes in the history of armored warfare. Thank you so much for watching. What are your thoughts on the Hago tank? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this dive into military history, please give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more stories like this. See you in the next one.